will go under review.
Citizens of Earth, Bills fans, football fans, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. My name is Joe DeRosa. Joe, hyphen, well, that's not hyphen, actually. Line C1. The tagline for tonight is B-Day Boy. Not because today is my B-Day, and not because by the time you're seeing this, it's my birthday, but the day after it actually is. I'm almost celebrating my 29th birthday, and I'm incredibly excited. And I'm incredibly excited for tonight's episode because we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of so many eventful things that have happened during this week in Bills training camp, such as the Hard Knocks episode premiere, James Cook's contract situation, and we will be previewing the preseason matchup with the New York Giants. Really just something that we've been kind of anticipating for a while, waiting for, excited for. These players that we've had stock on during camp that we finally want to see in some game action. This is the opportunity to see it. And I'm sure Bills fandom alike has been waiting and been so ready for this. And we finally got football, folks. And on tonight's episode, I am never by myself. That's not true. I have been by myself before, but I do have a guest this evening, someone that you would be very familiar with, not just because this person has been on this show, but because this person is doing really just an amazing job with their camp coverage, getting really exclusive interviews with players, and just giving you as much detail as they could possibly provide from Bills training camp. And that is the one and only, the incomparable Mike Bunn. Mike, welcome back to the show. It has been just 3 long weeks since I have had you here, but you are back on the airwaves to join me. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great tonight. Quite the introduction for me. That's one of the best I've heard so far. But I'm excited for the beginning of the preseason starting this Saturday, and a lot to talk about with camp wrapping up on Thursday.
Definitely, man. And, it's just, I keep saying this, we've had so many weeks of just nothing this summer, and to finally be back in the swing of getting these episodes out with actual, real, tangible Bills news to talk about, it's an exciting thing. And I just want to address the elephant in the room before we begin our conversation. My AirPods died, so you're seeing me wear my Logitech headphones that I usually use to play games with, and I usually don't wear these when I'm live just because I like the look of the AirPods. And also this big yellow, I don't even know, wire cord that maintains the height of the headphone just looks silly. I look like I'm wearing an antenna. So I don't usually wear them, but I got to wear them tonight for this one. And I just wanted to say that before anyone ever asked why that was on your head. Now, Mike, let's start this conversation. And I first want to ask you just again, you've been at camp, you've been able to cover it up close. You've done player interviews and they're exceptional. If you guys aren't following Mike, please do it. But your biggest takeaways from camp. I know we've talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, but now that we are, getting out of St. John Fisher and the practices are ramping up at the facility, just what were your biggest takeaways from your time covering Bills training camp?
Yeah, I have 3 big takeaways. Number 1, James Cook is now a story. It wasn't at the beginning, but now it is. And is there going to be a resolution? I'm not overly concerned about the situation, but how is it going to end? I don't know. How long is it going to last? I have no clue. I just hope that we get an answer to that sooner rather than later. Number 2, the injuries. Thank God most of them aren't serious. Even the news with Maxwell Harrison and Khalil Shakir could have been way worse with both of them. We just found out today that with Khalil Shakir that he is expected to be back before the start of the regular season. So good news there. Even Maxwell Harrison, if he misses some time, obviously he's going to be out a little while. Sean McDermott compared it to Cole Bishop's injury where he's going to be delayed and behind schedule in terms of reps. But he's going to be back at some point. And then the third thing for me, it's just status quo with this team. They go out there, they take care of business. A lot of these injuries are relatively minor things where players are going to be back before the start of the season. So they're just out there, they're working hard, and eventually we're going to have some games to be talking about in the near future.
Very near future as we get our first taste of game action again this weekend against the New York Giants. But before we delve into that preview, just to go over your points, Mike, starting with James Cook's hold in, if you want to call it a hold in, very interesting. When he started practices and ramped up training camp and practiced with the team and was out there on drills, but also out there in the scrimmages, I was like, wow, for someone that's in a contract situation where he obviously wants to either get an extension or get more market money, and for someone that is in this position of leverage, if you want to call it that, I'm surprised he's out there. I'm surprised that he's actually participating this much with the team, and it shows, a lot of good faith. And I don't think that has gone away. I defend the player that wants to get his money however he sees it fit. This is a common tactic. And if anything, the Rashawn Slater news that occurred just a few hours ago should let every NFL fan know why players do this, because they need to protect themselves. And with James Cook, who is a running back in the NFL, probably the most unstable market for position players in this league, you got to protect yourself and get your money. So I have no ill will towards James Cook making this hold in a thing, because especially with Sean McDermott's commentary today talking about how he's still there for meetings, he's still there in the walkthroughs, he's just not out there for the actual field component. And that is something that you want to see addressed soon, however it can happen, whether there's an extension, whether it's just a change of mind to go back out there and play on his current deal. But it still is a big story, and still one that I wonder, Mike, are we going to see the resolution? Like, will we see this contract situation resolved sooner than later? Earlier in the week, the Film Room guys did an episode on this, but Kyron Williams gets his extension at about $11 million per year, which would put him, I believe, at 6th or 7th as far as running back tiers go for contract average annual value. James Cook, we've heard was asking anywhere from north of 15 to 20 million. A lot of people deem that 11 million to 12 million range is fair. And I'm wondering if that is going to be agreed upon, if they will reach a mutual agreement and get him to a fair deal for both sides, which I think is in that range. But it has become a story, Mike. And going on to your other points, I mean, the injuries, Max Hairston, sigh of relief. Talked about this last week and the week before. Like, very thankful that it wasn't anything worse, but it does suck to see the rookie not get valuable reps, especially in, with the CB2 battle and the need for stability at that point. It's unfortunate, but we can at least take resolve in the fact that he will play this season, that he will be out there, and he can be rotated in at a very slow pace, because you do get the luxury of a veteran Trey White showing out in camp and really stabilizing that position and making you feel comfortable with it, even if he does have to rehab. And then same goes for Khalil Shakir, just a high ankle sprain. Again, not something you want to underplay, but given when it happened, 4 to 6 week timeline, and anticipating him being back for a very massive opener with the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, you can't really ask for much better than that. I want to say this, Mike, and then we'll continue. The injury list is long, and it sucks that it's long, but I feel like we do a thing every year where we overly panic about it. And I'm not going to downplay the things like Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop not getting reps together, because I do think that matters. And I'm not going to downplay something like Max Hairston missing 4 weeks, and maybe that affects his rookie season. But what I will say is, last year, people panicked about the long list, and it ended up being fine for week 1. And I think we're going to see a similar situation and be more thankful that it wasn't anything massively long-term that altered the course of their season, knock on wood, for the rest of the preseason. So, Mike, going to turn it back to you. Any more thoughts on that? Any more thoughts on the James Cook situation? I want to give the floor back to you, my friend.
Yeah, regarding the injuries, Sean McDermott has even acknowledged that they play it cautious when it comes to injury management, making sure that guys are at a certain percentage health-wise before going back on the practice field. The last thing they want to do is put somebody out there that's dealing with some stuff and make it even worse. So I do think there is a combination of veteran rest days and load management that you see out there. And then when somebody is nicked up a little bit, they're playing it safer than what they probably would do in the regular season when it comes to, should this person practice today, or should we give them a little bit more rest? Because this is the time to give them rest. You don't have anything to lose by letting somebody heal. In the regular season, you could possibly lose games. Then it starts to mean a little bit more. So there definitely is a cautious approach by the Bills head coaching staff and their strength and conditioning. The one thing I will say about James Cook, I think 11 to 12 million is the sweet spot for where the Bills would be willing to go to make something work for James Cook. My biggest concern is I don't know if James Cook is willing to go down to 12 million to come to terms with the Bills. Right. If you look at the Kyren Williams deal at 11 million, 3 years, 33 total, that's a perfectly fair deal for James Cook. I would even make that 3 years, 36 million, and to make something work. But I feel like we have conflicting information going on right now. Every time you hear a national media person speak, whether it's Tom Pelissero, Diana Rossini, Pete Prisco, they keep saying that Cook is trying to get this over the finish line, that the two sides aren't far apart, and that they think something could get done. I believe that's probably getting leaked by Cook and his agent to these national media people. And then every time you hear Brandon Beane talk, it takes two to tango, that we need Cook to be willing to see where we're at. And from what my thoughts are, I don't think James Cook ever actually believed that he was going to get 15 plus million per year if we're living in a realistic world. But that's a starting point. That's where I want my negotiations to begin. Yeah. And then the Bills respond with where they're at. And the fact that this hasn't come to a resolution through an entire offseason probably means that the two sides aren't really that close at this point. So I'm not to say that I could obviously be wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that 3 national reporters are way off the mark, but the fact that he is sitting out, I guess it's always possible that maybe it is to try to narrow that gap and make something happen. To me, he came in practicing good faith and was hoping that was going to be enough to close that gap. And my biggest takeaway is that the Bills haven't budged. So we'll see what happens. I still think he's going to be out there Sunday Night Football week 1 against Baltimore, no matter what, because once game checks are on the line, once your production is possibly diminished because you're missing games or you're missing reps, you're going to cost yourself on your next contract. Right now, doesn't hurt anything. You stay healthy, you stay in game shape, you don't lose, you don't have that risk of injury. Let's see how it is a couple weeks from now. If this still goes into late August, then I'll be concerned. But it's way too early now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think right now we got to keep our perspectives a little more tempered because it's August. At the time of recording this, it's August 7th. You know, when it comes to things like hold-ins, extension talk, or injury, or really anything impacting the day one roster or the regular season, we still got a few weeks to go. When we hit August, there's like this acceleration that occurs in a lot of fans' minds of like, oh my God, like season's here tomorrow. And it's like, nah, dude, we still got like a month left, like a little more than a month left.
Exactly. A month exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah. So I mean, you got a month of time. You got all this grace period, if you want to call it, this large grace period ahead of you to figure things out. And when it comes to James Cook and when it comes to the Bills, I'm more on the side that I do think that the negotiations aren't as far apart as we thought, but it might be something where, like you alluded to, James Cook started at a higher figure at around like that actual 20 million mark, that Saquon Barkley mark, just knowing that that's the top of the market and that's where I'm going to start these, because if I work backwards, you know, I'm not going to fall too far. Whereas the Buffalo Bills obviously base it off market projections, based off, again, his production, the output, long-term evaluation, and probably saw him more in the Josh Jacobs or Alvin Kamara tier. And to me, when I'm comping him to any contract that's on the market, that's where I'm putting him, in that bracket specifically. Because what I think you're getting with James Cook is a great running back, an amazing compliment to Josh Allen, who has really helped galvanize this rushing attack. You know, I credit the offensive line, Aaron Cromer, a ton, but James Cook deserves his flowers for what he has been able to accomplish behind that line. And he is a great compliment for what the Bills are doing schematically in their rushing attack when you talk about gap, power, and like duo running schemes. He runs between those tackles really well. And I think because of that, when you look at how he complements your offense stylistically, when you look at what he brings to the table in both explosiveness as a runner, the strength he's gained to be able to stay on his feet, the contact balance, and then in addition, the ability to receive out of the backfield and be utilized in that 5 to 10 yard range, which he was the third leading receptions leader on the team. You got to take into account how much that matters for your team, but you also have to be realistic. And it's why I don't blame Brandon Beane for holding his ground and not caving and giving him the $16-17 million deal. Because my honest view of James Cook as a running back is that he's really, really good, but I don't think he's a bell cow. I don't think he's an every down back. He cannot, in my opinion, pass block at an adequate enough level to justify being there over someone who could do it at a higher level like Ty Johnson. That's not me saying Ty Johnson's a better back, but there are limitations that justify a lower contract, a lower AAV, and you have to be mindful of that when you talk about long-term extensions of a player. And while it's unfortunate that they have not agreed to a contract yet, I just wonder if the situation with James Cook right now is a blessing in disguise, because if there was any sort of like final ground that maybe Brandon Beane didn't have to so rush on because he thought he had James Cook in his pocket playing ready to go for the next few weeks, that maybe him holding in creates a sense of urgency. And all you hope, if you are a Bills fan who is conscious of the salary cap and what that could do for future moves, free agency next year, or retention of other players such as Connor McGovern, is that he doesn't panic and overspend. And right now, you're having a staring contest of James Cook and Brandon Beane. I don't know who's going to blink first, but I personally feel that someone is going to blink soon. I am hoping that it's not so much that if James Cook blinks, he misses out on, generational money. It's just not Saquon Barkley money. I'm in the camp that he should be getting at most like 12.5 to 13 million. And I think that's a perfectly fair deal for what he brings to the table as a running back. So Mike, any more thoughts on this James Cook hold in? I love the term hold in. It's so funny.
Yeah. I just hope we get a resolution soon. I do think anything beyond 12 million starts to get a little rich for me. As far as like, is he worth 12 plus million? I don't think so. I can justify it because of what he brings to this Bills offense in terms of explosiveness and his importance to this team going forward. But if you ask yourself, what do you want to see out of a running back worth more than 12 million per season? I don't think Cook brings the analytical value, the metric value that justifies that payment. But am I going to get upset over overpaying a guy by $1 or $2 million a year when you have a $200+ million salary cap? No. So yeah. I'll be okay with it. I do think when we started this offseason, we all thought that 10 would be a rich contract. Now we're kind of getting ourselves to 12 to 13 million. So if anything, it shows that James Cook has kind of helped the narrative into raising what the ceiling for what he's worth, because a lot of people would have thought that 10 million would have been that ceiling heading into February and in March and April. So good for him if he eventually gets paid. At the end of the day, I just want to see him on the field. I want the Bills to be able to have him part of their long-term plans, because I really do believe that James Cook is a perfect running back for what they run offensively. And even though a lot of people think running backs are easily replaceable, I don't think that what James Cook brings to the table is easily replaceable. And in order to do so, you're probably investing another second or third round pick into a running back next year. And I would rather use that on another position of need to help out the roster during a Super Bowl window.
And if you want to make the argument that James Cook still has his best football in front of him, I think that's perfectly valid. It's probably something that his agent is using right now, too. Looking at his past 2 seasons, Pro Bowler in both, and over 1,000 rushing yards, and really just over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in general, because he's someone that can give you that plus receiving, like from the backfield, like I said earlier. But, you got someone who is probably... I still think you could argue his prime is either now or ahead of him. And I think if you think paying him $2 more million is okay because you're banking on getting that production consistently, I can buy into that. It's not what I would prefer, but if you told me tomorrow they came to an agreement on like a $14 million per year contract, it wouldn't be the end of the world. And I don't want the takeaway from this to be, we hate James Cook or we don't want James Cook to get paid, because things can get misconstrued. It's just that I think there are contracts that are just, when you talk about relative to production, fairer and then a little less fair from the team's sake. And it's not that we're shills for the organization, but in terms of hamstringing yourself for future deals, you just never know what like 1 to 3 million can do for you when you talk about an extension with another vital piece. And I think the Connor McGovern thing that I mentioned earlier just should keep being mentioned because he is also an extension candidate that did not come to an agreement with the Bills this offseason. I don't think that happens this season if they do extend James Cook. And I think, my philosophy when it comes to offensive line is I never want to rock the boat in any specific way. I want to keep it intact. I think they have a really good thing going. I do like that they took, Cedric Van Granger last year and a pure center from Georgia, played SEC ball, did quite well in the role. If you had to turn it over to him, I could buy into it, especially if Aaron Kromer's giving you the signal that it's okay. But I also like retaining players that have built rapport, especially at the center position with Josh Allen. And I like maintaining players that can keep the actual structure and strength of your offense intact, which is, again, that power running game, the ability to move really any trench against any team. I want to keep that intact, so I am mindful of what a McGovern extension could potentially look like, and the Cook extension going beyond projections can tap into that a bit. I'd like to keep both players if possible, but again, if they paid James Cook tomorrow and it was 14 million, even 15, while it wouldn't be my favorite, it would be a little rich. I would understand it, and I'd be happy to retain him. We'll hope a solution happens soon, but we're just going to have to wait and see, Mr. Mike Bunt. We're just going to have to wait and see. And I want to now just circle back to the injury conversation one more time. Again, we talked about Hairston, talked about Shakir, but I mean, like, just a little bit more on the long list. You said McDermott, and really, he said this himself, they're a bit more conservative with their injuries. But I do want to ask you, like, when it comes to guys like Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, that tandem, when it comes to some of the other players like Curtis Samuel, the guys that have missed extended periods of time, I mean, is there any concern on your side for these guys when it comes to the regular season? Or are you sitting here in the camp of, I don't care if week 1 comes and they're able to play, then they're able to play and we'll be fine? What do you think?
So I'm not as concerned about them being able to play as I'm concerned about what do they bring to the table, and not so much Taylor Rapp. He showed last year what he's capable of. But Cole Bishop is a mostly unproven player who's entering his second year after limited reps as a rookie. And we don't know what Cole Bishop is at this point in time. That's a concern for me, that he's basically missing all of training camp for a second consecutive season. Even if he is ready to go, he's missing valuable reps. And I think that's a big question mark going into the regular season. I'm assuming he's the starter, but if he does begin the year and struggles out of the gate, I could see a door opening for Damar Hamlin to regaining the starter position if Cole Bishop gets off to a really poor start. Now, we have no way of saying he will or he won't because we just don't really have a large enough sample size with him. When it comes to some of the other guys you mentioned, like Curtis Samuel, that's another concern for me because last year dealt with turf toe, got off to a slow start, and obviously the injuries impacted his production at the first half of the season, and then he had a decent end to the season. But then once again, you're trying to integrate him into your offense, and he's just not there. We all talk about Balin Spector and the injuries and eventually how he paid the price getting waived. And I know that since then, I think he was put on injured reserve after clearing waivers. But the fact of it is, Curtis Samuel has yet to show the upside that Bills fans have been hoping for since he signed with the team. The entire receiver room is kind of a question mark at this point. Joshua Palmer has missed some practices. Obviously, Khalil Shakir is missing significant time, but you already know what you have in Shakir. At the end of the day, I think Curtis Samuel missing practices is hurting his case to really be a potential impact fourth wide receiver on this team. He was never going to be putting up big time numbers, but heading into camp, a lot of Bills fans thought, okay, you have Shakir, you have Coleman, you have Palmer, you have Moore, you have Samuel, and now I don't know if you can even include Samuel in more in that discussion anymore. It looks like you have a solid 3, and then it's a lot of question marks after that.
Yeah. So Where I think I can align myself with, and this kind of ties back into what I said earlier with the safety tandem and just going off what you said. I don't so much worry about availability. I think there's plenty of time to get these guys back in the swing of things, but the ramp up and how that could bleed into week one is something I worry about more. And I think that's a valid argument because, again, when I think people see the injury report, they think these guys aren't going to play. I get a little bit more concerned over like, wow, okay, he missed basically all of training camp and now has to come back and get acclimated really quickly. And even if his body is still on the field, is he 100% yet? Is he able to contribute in a meaningful way? Curtis Samuel, I'm worried just about long-term health because, yes, this is the second summer in a row that we have seen Curtis Samuel face a significant injury that has hampered his ability to be productive. And when it comes to how the Bills intend to use Curtis Samuel, I feel like the full potential of his role in this offense has been quite limited because he himself has been quite limited. And in the glimpses that we did have a healthy Curtis Samuel, I have said this before, I think he had become quite a big part of the receiving game and had been very valuable. You saw him with very meaningful catches at the end of the season in both Chiefs games, in that Broncos game. Curtis Samuel made noise and made his presence felt because he was healthy, able to go, and he's a great piece that you can move across the line if you want to line him out wide, if you want to move him in the slot, if you want to get him going up the seam. He gives you all of that, but he needs to stay on the field, and we haven't been given enough confidence that he can do that consistently. And that's a problem because the Bills went out and got this guy for, a decent contract for his position. Obviously not market setting money, but tangible and significant enough given what the Bills salary cap situation was when they signed him. They went out and got him, they paid him, and I feel like the return on investment has been very minor. And we need to see more on that. Or unfortunately, it would go down as a probably loss in the Brandon Beane free agent signing column. And I think people would be fair to say so. Samuel's a good player, but he has to stay on the field. So I do worry about his effectiveness outright if this hamstring injury is something that lingers until the end of August. And then, he has like maybe 1 to 2 weeks to ramp up and that's it. Now he's a veteran. You might hope that he knows the playbook by now. He's been here one more year. That does give me a little confidence, but not so much that it would make me think he's going to be a dependent upon target in week one. And I mean, you could say the same thing for Khalil Shakir. He will be back week one, but how effective is he? Is the ankle going to be limited? Is he going to, face a lingering injury? Is this receiving core that much of a factor in week one? I think that's a valid thing to be concerned over. I think you'll see the players play, but are you going to see them in their true form or kind of a shell of themselves while they continue to ramp up? And just getting into the safety room, Taylor Rapp seems to be a week-to-week thing, or at least 1 week. Sean McDermott said he came back to practice this week. He got out again. It seems like they're just giving him time to rest his knee to get okay. I'm not really as worried about him. He's been a starter, someone that you've turned to. And when it comes to your backup safety and DeMar Hamlin, if he's got to fill in, he's got to fill in. But I'm really disappointed so far in the Cole Bishop tenure. Not even just for his play on the field, which I think was still very much developing. And I've said before, we've seen flashes for. And I like Cole Bishop as a player. I believe in Cole Bishop as a player, as a prospect. But you got to stay on the field. And again, we're in a second summer where a significant injury is taking away meaningful reps for a position where you are one of the prime communicators. You are one of the generals of that defense. You are going to be called upon heavily to command traffic, and you're going to be closer to the line. You're going to be further away from the line. You're going to be a part of all the different disguised looks that the Bills have. You have to be as polished and sharp on your communication as possible to succeed. We know how much stock they put in the safety position and how much they task with safeties in their defense, so much that we have said it can be a multi-year development process. And I'm not out on Cole Bishop. I'm not swearing off Cole Bishop, nothing ridiculous like that. But I need to see him stay on the field. I need long-term results from Cole Bishop. A quad injury keeping him out for 3 weeks is not a good start to the season for him. We need to have more, especially when your first week opponent is one of the nastiest offenses in the NFL that can absolutely mutilate your secondary if you are even a tick slow or late to react. They need the most out of him, and I'm hoping that this is just something that he can get through quicker than usual, get back within the week, and start ramping up in the secondary. Because at this point, if you don't have these guys with sound chemistry, I don't expect a lot from the safety room for the first few weeks. And it's unfortunate that this even has to be a conversation again. But those are really the only ones I'm like majorly worried about. Again, like Hairston's a rookie. It sucks that he's missing the reps, but also if Trey White wasn't here, I'd be a lot more panicked. I think Trey is doing quite a nice job in training camp. He's giving you every reason to believe that he's CB2 going forward. You know, you have plenty of depth at that position too, that I think you could feel a little comfortable in, even if it was Dane Jackson rotating in for a play here and there. If you believe in what Dorian Strong is becoming, who's been having decent reps at camp. So I'm not so much worried about him, but really just those safeties and Curtis Samuel. And I guess a little bit of Khalil Shakir too. Granted, Khalil Shakir, he'll be back. We know what he can be, but week one is where I'm kind of sitting like, oh, are we really going to get the true Shakir? And that's kind of where I stand on these injuries, Mike. I mean, any more thoughts on that before we get to our preview of this weekend's event?
No, that pretty much sums it up. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact that even though this list is very long, that the concern shouldn't be astronomical, because I do think that that does become kind of routine year after year after year, where we always start worrying about the list of injuries, not realizing as long as they're not major and most of these guys are back before the start of the regular season, that things will be okay. Obviously, with a few guys, it's going to stink as far as lack of ramping up. But for the most part, the Bills are likely to be healthy once the regular season gets here.
Yeah. And listen, I hope that this entire conversation ages terribly. And by the time this episode releases, that next week these guys are back and they got a few weeks in practice to figure things out. But even then, I still feel a little concerned, like with Cole Bishop only having a few weeks to get it right. You know what I mean? Like, is that enough time for the year two player to be fully in control? Started camp, came out once, came back in, and then had a longer term injury. Like, this is just a meaningful time of year to get your reps, to get your chemistry in. And minor injuries are one thing I don't really bat an eye over, like Dalton Kincaid coming out for a play, going back in, and then practicing every day of the week. It's these long sustained ones that really concern me. So hoping for the best for them, hoping they heal up soon, and hope we get good play. But Mike, I want to move on to this weekend's event. Saturday, August 9th at 1 p.m. You will find the New York Football Giants headed to Buffalo for the first preseason game, where you get to watch the ever so polarizing matchup of Jackson Dart versus Mitch Trubisky. I know all of you are tuning in for that exact reason, but Sean McDermott confirmed that Josh Allen will not be playing in the game today. That is such a tragedy. I am so upset. I don't think I can live with myself. I am just kidding, of course, especially after seeing what unfortunately transpired to Anthony Richardson just like an hour and a half ago, which, Mike, I don't know if you saw the replay of that.
I did.
That man's pinky was not in a pinky direction. It was moved in a way that it should not be moved. And all I'm saying is thank you for not starting this man in this game. You're probably going to see Josh Allen this preseason, but in a very cautious, safe role, just like they do every year. But Mike, we know that they're going to have some starters play. It would probably be for a series, maybe two. I would hope that that would be guys like Keon Coleman. I would hope that would be a couple of your starting defensive linemen. I would hope that maybe you get to see a little bit of like a Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau combination. I don't know. I don't know what their plan is.
Joey Bosa. Do you really want
No, but like he hasn't. Oh, so here's my thing, because I know I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I just said keep Josh Allen in bubble wrap, but then saying Joey Bosa of all people should go play. But Joey Bosa has not played on the Bills before, and I don't know what he looks like in tandem with this D line, but maybe it doesn't have to be this week. The point I really am trying to get at is I don't know what starters we're going to see, but if you had to pick any that you could expect to play, Mike, who would you pick, and why are you excited to watch him?
So the players I'm excited about watching are the youngsters on the defense, because you already really kind of know what the offense is. You're not going to have James Cook on Saturday, so forget about anything from him. You're not going to have Josh Allen. So offensively speaking, it's going to be sloppy. You're going to have Mitch Trubisky, Mike White, Shane Buechele. I can guarantee you it's not going to look pretty as far as the passing game. Probably not going to see much Josh Palmer, if he even suits up. You'll have Keon for maybe a series. You'll get a lot of Tyrell Shavers early on, most likely. Now that's a guy I'm excited to watch.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you this, and I don't know if this is getting enough pub. I think Tyrell Shavers has a chance of making this roster. The way they were pumping him up on Monday with the ones, with Josh Allen, tells me they want to see what he can do this preseason. He's been a preseason impact player the last preseason. He had a touchdown last year. I think what his career stat line, 1 catch,
1 reception
yards.
and it's a screen. Incredible.
Nice. But I really do think Tyrell Shavers has a chance of making this roster, especially with how the receiver room is looking right now with the injuries. If you factor in that 1 through 3 is safe, you're going to have Shakir, Coleman, Palmer. That's 1, 2, 3 right there. And then you probably have Moore and obviously Samuel. But we don't know about Samuel's health. We don't know what that situation is. That leaves one more spot. I don't think it's going to be Laviska Shenault, even if he's a return man. I don't think he's going to end up making the roster. But Tyrell Shavers is a guy I think can be a sneaky low man on the roster, and especially when I saw all the reps with the ones. Josh Allen must have targeted him nearly 10 times on Monday.
Yeah.
He had a touchdown at the end of practice. He was making big plays throughout and against starting defenders as well. So I think Shavers is a player to definitely watch. It's hard to bring up other offensive guys because we already know who the starting offensive line is. We know who the backup linemen are going to be. We know what the tight end room is. We know, I guess, the backup quarterback position would be something to watch.
Yeah.
Is that going to be Trubisky or is that going to be Mike White? Trubisky gets the first chance. White obviously has been all right in practice. And then you go to the defensive side. That's where you have these interesting players. And I don't want to steal all of your thunder, but you don't have Maxwell Harrison, so forget about him. Yeah. But you have TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, Landon Jackson. Those are 3 draft picks on your defensive line that you're going to see for the first time in game action on Saturday. You're going to probably want to watch what happens at backup linebacker because even though the top 3 is pretty solid, we really don't know how it's going to shape up behind Dorian Williams in that room. And then, I mean, you brought up safety. We're not going to see Rapp or Bishop in this game. So I guess who are the starting safeties? It's probably going to be Cam Lewis and DeMar Hamlin, which then gives Jordan Hancock a chance to get reps at nickel corner in this game. He's been all over the field so far during training camp. And while he might not be a name that many Bills fans are thinking of, he has a lot of potential out of Ohio State. And he has made plays at times when I've been watching him. And Dorian Strong as well, as another guy trying to make this team as a rookie corner out of Virginia Tech. So it's all about the defense this year. You can forget about most of the guys on the offense. Focus on the defensive youngsters and maybe a few vets fighting for the final roster spots.
Well said. Well said. I agree with really any name you mentioned here. And just to go back to the offensive side of the ball, Mitch Trubisky. I'm just kidding. I mean, how could you not be romantic about Mitch Trubisky throwing the football in the summertime? I'm very excited for that, but I'm going to just state the obvious. If he even gets any reps at all, I don't know if he will, and I don't know how many, but Keon Coleman would obviously be one that I think everybody is watching. I don't believe he was deconfirmed to play, and if anything, it would make sense to get him on the field because he is a player that has been turning heads in camp for better or for worse. It hasn't been consistent, but it has been damn fun, and you have seen flashes of potential from the player. And I want to see Keon Coleman in action. But really, I want to see how they use Keon Coleman. Are we staticking, X-ing him, really tying him specifically to a wideout role or to the boundary? Or do we move him around? Do we get him involved in some slot work and get him across the field and try to get some easy kindling for Mitch Trubisky and subsequently maybe Mike White? Maybe not. I don't know. That is something I'm interested to see, is really not only just him as a player, but what his role looks like and really what this offense looks like. How much under center play action do we see? How much pistol do we potentially see? I know Eric and Ant were at practice a few days ago and had mentioned that pistol was a very common thing they were seeing amongst the offense. So that's a ton of fun. I really want to see those factors with specific players. I am excited to watch more of Ray Davis. I feel like Ray Davis is just an emerging young player that really showed really well last year. Very much just a capable running back with a lot of power, a lot of strength. What does that look like in a preseason game against the Giants D-line that if they have any starters at all, it would be quite a test considering how they've beefed up that line substantially. So I'm excited to watch him. Obviously, other ancillary players, like I'm so excited to watch Jackson Hawes. even though it's I'm gonna get too excited, but like I'm so excited to watch Jackson Hawes. He is just it shouldn't be my favorite player from the draft class, but he is, just because again, it's the funniest like thing they could have done is just get this menacing blocking tight end. What does he look like when he's getting his pads low and he's just ramming into people? Is he going to be able to make an impact and create some rushing lanes on the outside? Is he in line? Do they use him as a receiver often? I'm excited to watch that. On the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned TJ Sanders and Deion Walker. I'm probably my biggest two right there, at least in the front, just because again, I want to see TJ Sanders in that 3-tech role if Ed Oliver's not playing, and how disruptive he could potentially be. A good showing from him would instill a lot of confidence in Bills fans when it comes to that pass rush and run defense to boot. Same for Deion Walker. If you're asking Deion Walker to play like a 1-tech, nose tackle role, whatever you decide to align him as, I mean, what does that look like? Does he hold his own ground well? Can he anchor? Can he get low enough to not get pushed around in run defense? We know that was something of a problem for him at Kentucky. Would it be a problem again, or was there some coaching that went into him that has really improved his technique and form? And I would say the same thing for Dwayne Carter. Dwayne Carter being tasked with that nose tackle, 1-tech role. What does that look like for him? Do we see improvements? Because last preseason, there were numerous reps where he got blown off the ball. Does that look more stable now? Does he look more poised, more composed, playing sounder technique? Again, not getting displaced, not getting moved around. I'm excited to watch that. I'm excited to watch what the fronts look like if Ryan Nielsen shows any of his tricks, and maybe we see some interesting alignments, whether there are stunts, twists to be shown, whether it is who's lining up in what gap, and getting creative with how you align your linebackers in tandem with your line. I am excited to watch all of that. For the secondary, Mike, I mean, you mentioned a lot of names. Dorian Strong is someone I'm curious to watch too, because I think for him, I know we were talking about starters originally, and this just bled into like other players. So I completely abandoned that because again, these starters are playing for like 5 minutes, folks. If you're going to watch starters, you're watching 30 seconds of a game. But when we talk about other players, Dorian Strong, I mean, Max Hairston is out. He's not going to be practicing for a couple weeks. He is not going to be a factor right now. Trey White will probably get reps. I don't know how many. You only have so many corners in the room. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. This is an opportunity for Dorian Strong to wow people. This was a pick that a lot of people said when the Bills got him, it was an absolute steal, and that people had him valued as high as a 3rd rounder. Sound man technique, someone that can play both ways as a zone corner, but really solid as a man corner and can aid you if you're trying to go single high. Does he get a lot of run? What does it look like for him? How effective is he? What does the run defense component for him look like? Are we going to see sound technique from him as well? But the player you mentioned, and I'm really glad you did, is Jordan Hancock. Because a player that I had originally envisioned as someone more on the back end, wouldn't be a practice squad designation. He always screamed to me like a Cam Lewis successor, that when Cam Lewis is gone, Hancock's going to slide in as that utility, like off the bench tactician, multiple position guy that can play nickel, that can play free, that can play strong, that can even play outside corner if you needed him to. I really am excited to watch consistent, focused reps for Jordan Hancock, just considering what their safety room looks like right now, and if he is able to give us any glimpses of hope at the safety position. Because again, I'm not saying it's doomed. I'm not saying that they're never going to play again, that it's not going to work. But right now, I think people would be very happy to have a stabilizing presence in the safety room. And if it is this young player who is still working on his communication, as Bobby Babich had mentioned today, who is still figuring it out, but has that athleticism and that ability to fly to the ball, be a good run defender, make some plays in the passing game, even if it is a vanilla preseason game. I just think that can breed a lot of optimism for fans and people who are skeptical of the current construction of the room, and ultimately boost a lot of stock for Jordan Hancock himself as a mainstay for this roster, as someone that can be turned to. And if you want to get even more cheeky with it and maybe go with some dime looks with him on the field, that would be an option if he plays well. So he is someone that I'm really excited to watch. And I don't think I'm sitting here really missing anybody. Like Joe Andreessen would be a lot of fun to see with some live bullets going. I think he is going to be their starting Mike in this game, just because Bernard is still working his way back and Matt Milano, is having a great camp. Why push the envelope with him? Maybe he doesn't need to play this week. Like Andreessen and Dorian Williams, who I know is also banged up, could be a fun combination to watch. And I want to see how he does, because last preseason, Andreessen shined in that Pittsburgh game. He looked exceptional.
Star.
Yeah, man. I mean, he was the talk of the town and he earned a roster spot because of his great play in camp and preseason. I don't think that just went away. I just think Terrell Bernard exists and Matt Milano exists, and he's just lower on the depth chart by default. But there's plenty of opportunity for him to go out there against the Giants and make some noise again and just continue to reinforce the depth in this linebacker room, especially now that you know that Balin Spector's gone and his really only other, like, I guess if you want to call it threat for a spot, which I don't even think exists because I think he's a lock for the roster now that Spector's probably on a season-ending IR stint. But Shaq Thompson. Yeah, Shaq Thompson. I always almost say Lawson every time I mention his name. Can you blame me? He was on the team for 4 years. But when I think about Joe Andreessen's role, I think he is shaping up to be your primary backup at the middle linebacker position, or even as an outside linebacker if Dorian Williams goes down. And if they decide to play some 4-3, which you might very well see them do against the Ravens, like that is a player I'm excited to watch. I'm sure Bills fans and Buffalo natives are excited to watch him. Show out there, kid. Let's see what you got. Like, again, reinforce the positive feelings everyone has about you and just give us something to work with when we talk about you as depth this season. And Mike, I can't really think of anyone else because, again, I'm not going to say James Cook. I'm not going to say Dalton Kincaid. I mean, maybe Kincaid, but he's also kind of banged up.
I am interested to watch, but not for the positive reasons. It's Elijah Moore.
Oh,
I want to see
I forgot to mention
how they use him and if we get anything positive to discuss, because there was a lot of hype from the fan base going into the summer.
Yep.
And I'll say this, having been at 7 camp practices, he has not done much at all.
Mm-hmm.
He started camp rotating between the 2s and the 1s.
Yep.
And if you're with the 2s with this group of receivers, that's not a good starting point for you. I know you could say that's not the end of the world, but they essentially had Curtis Samuel ahead of him at the beginning of camp. You could say they were rotating. That's fair. But the role Curtis Samuel has as a gadget player was evident early on the first days of camp before he obviously went out. The Bills have had practices where they have been missing 3 of their 4 top receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And on those days, Elijah Moore still hasn't been noticeable.
Mm.
That's a concern.
Yeah.
When it's Keon Coleman, Elijah Moore, Jalen Virgil, Tyrell Shavers, KJ Hamler,
yeah,
and other names, and Elijah Moore is not shining, what's that tell you? I'm just going to say, the practice that Tyrell Shavers went off, Moore was there.
Yeah.
I know Moore's been dealing with some of his own issues, but
yeah.
I just don't think the Bills are as high on Elijah Moore as what this fan base thinks they are. And, you know, that could all change. On Saturday, he could go out. He could have like 5 catches for like 65 yards and a touchdown, and I'll eat my words. But based on what I have seen in practice, I'll go by pass catchers, not by receivers. Shakir is going to be your number 1 volume guy, no doubt about it. Coleman has actually surpassed Palmer, in my opinion. Coleman is going to be a volume. He's going to have more volume this year. I think he's going to be a 50 to 60 catch guy, around 800 yards. I think Palmer is going to be around a 50 catch guy for 700 plus.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kincaid then slots in at that 3 or 4 spot in receptions. And you factor in that Kincaid had an injury last year that hurt his production at times. And Allen didn't have a great connection with him, even when Kincaid did get open at times last year. I don't know as much now. I don't know if I feel as confident now about Moore really having a big impact on this team. Even if he is that 4 receiver, I think you're looking at max a guy that's between 20 to 30 catches for around 300 yards in a season. I do not see this elevation happening with the Bills in their offense unless there is injuries, or things drastically changing within the next month.
Yeah, and It's kind of the scenario I was hoping wouldn't happen with Elijah Moore because I was pretty bullish on him and I still have some hope for him, but it is disappointing to hear that his training camp hasn't really been substantial. He did deal with injury to start, but even then, like where he's been, the opportunities he's had, and the receivers he's kind of competing against, like you would expect more production from him if he really did have this larger role or larger standard of production in mind for him, and it just hasn't come to fruition yet, but that could change. We could see things. I am going to be watching him closely just because he's really one of the only healthy bodies you got. You're kind of hoping he's providing you something. Yeah. No, and I mean,
I hope he goes off. Like, I would love nothing more than Elijah Moore going off and then earning that role. And because I feel if he's your number 4 receiver, I feel pretty good on paper about that.
Right.
But I feel like every season we kind of do this as a fan base. There's been years where it's Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy. Last year, Curtis Samuel. Now the turf toe, I understand that impacted him. But there's always those guys that you look into the beginning of OTAs and training camp. You're like, yeah, this guy is under the radar. I don't know how we were able to get him with Josh Allen. That's going to bring out the best in them. Look at the quickness and the shorts. And then the pads go on, and they just don't pop. And I had my questions in the offseason based on the Bills waiting until after the draft to sign him, 31 other teams not going after him.
Yeah.
And then signing for minimal money. And I think it's the money part that was the biggest giveaway. Because if the Bills were truly invested in him, they would have gotten after him sooner, and they wouldn't be starting him with any reps with the twos in training camp. When you're coming off a 61 reception season, you shouldn't be with the twos on your next NFL team.
I think for that conversation, I'm sorry to cut you off, Mike. I think too, like when we anticipated Elijah Moore's role in this wide receiver room, I mean, I think you and I both agreed it'd be back end. So like something of the 4-5, or if they carried 6, you could even argue 5 to 6. And I think like, you know, it's not to say that reps with the twos are good or a positive sign, but I do think they would interchange both levels just for a player that's probably going to fill out the back end of your wide receiver. Because if I remember correctly, I think MVS also took reps with twos last year. And even though he eventually got, you know, removed from the team, you know, they moved on from him, he did make the opening roster.
About MVS, man.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did. I think like, dude, that was such a blip. Like, especially considering he went to the Saints and like had like this random, like I think it was like an almost 200-yard game and like 2 touchdowns. It was awesome. But that's just kind of it. Like you're going to see him get lower tier, lower quality, quote unquote, reps when you're at that spot. And I think when we evaluated him, it was never this anticipation of him being like a highly touted guy. But again, like, if you're not doing anything productive, there's no reason for them to hold into you. I mean, they gave OJ Howard a few years ago a very low risk contract, and now there was this widespread expectation that that was the start of 12P and that he was going to, even some people say, usurp Dawson Knox and become their primary tight end, and he got cut after camp. So Elijah Moore could be this year's OJ Howard. It could be another situation like that, but we'll just have to see. I'm curious what it looks like against the Giants, because if he doesn't do anything in that game, you know, whether it's deep into the second quarter, whether that's in the second half, and there's just no volume from him, I definitely think, despite me kind of having this problem with preseason narratives and expectations that can be a little too heightened, we've seen it time and time again, I would actually think that there is tangible evidence that it's not working out if he's not able to achieve success with backups. If you're asking this guy to come in and start or be one of your starting wide receivers, or in that wide receiver room against high quality starters in the regular season immediately too with the Baltimore Ravens. So I definitely understand.
The thing about him is, and this is the thing I actually do applaud Brandon Beane this offseason, is that he really went after quality depth at several positions. Obviously, we know about the defensive line and the cornerback room where he double dipped with free agents and draft picks. If worst case scenario, Elijah Moore is depth at the receiver position, I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, I think that's a good thing in case guys do go down, because you want to have a variety of skill sets and guys that can step up. The thing I find interesting is in the last week or so during practice, I've seen Moore get end arounds, and I've seen him involved in even the running game to a certain extent. And when I see that, it reminds me of what they're doing with Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
Times. And I had always pondered during the offseason, is Moore here to have his own role, or is he here to compete with Curtis Samuel for that wide receiver 4 number? Now, with Samuel being out, Elijah Moore still has a great chance of earning that role. So if he earns that spot, maybe they say goodbye to Samuel, and Moore can still have an impact, maybe in a gadget spot. But I think what we were kind of talking about when he was first signed in OTAs was that he's a person that could add to could play as a vertical threat, that could get separation, that you could use interchangeably throughout the receiver room. And what I'm seeing more, no pun intended, is that they're really not getting him involved a lot with those opportunities. It's become more gadgety, short passing, and stuff like that. While you see them taking shots downfield to Keon Coleman, doesn't have the speed, but they've had shots to Keon Coleman down the field. They've taken shots to Tyrell Shavers down the field. Josh Palmer has been most notable in the intermediate 20. Like you every time you see it to Josh Palmer, it's a 15 to 25 yard pass. So like it's clear what they're trying to do with Josh Palmer.
Yeah, I think
it's just the signs right now. Things can change in the next month. You can change how you utilize players, but they've had the entire offseason to kind of formulate plans for their personnel. And it's unlikely that they're going to waver significantly from that 4 weeks before the start of the regular season.
Yep. I agree with everything you said. I remember reading about Elijah Moore's usage pre to post snap and it being basically like gadgety. And I was like, Curtis Samuel's out. Is he kind of doing what he's going to do? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be the same? And it really sounds like it hasn't been anything but like slightly worse. So I kind of wonder if Curtis Samuel comes back from this hamstring ailment, which again, Sean McDermott said they're just like one day at a time with him. And that it doesn't sound like it's on the corner of being over with. Then is Elijah Moore just going to have to be your fill-in person to start? And what I wonder, Mike, too, is, we get closer to the regular season. Let's say this Curtis Samuel hamstring injury lingers, and let's say Khalil Shakir, we know, isn't going to really ramp up until probably a week or two before the season starts. Then do they consider carrying 6 wide receivers to just have more bodies in the room because they're dealing with so many injuries? And does that mean that one of those fringe guys, if you want to call it Elijah Moore or Tyrell Shavers or Caden Prather or KJ Hamler or Jalen Virgil, any of these guys, or we haven't even talked about Christian Wilkerson, who has actually had a consistent and probably better camp than Elijah Moore has, unfortunately. Not even unfortunately. Like, if you're good at the role, you're good at the role. It's more just for someone who, like me, who I'm pretty sure I put Elijah Moore on my most underrated or highest ceiling players list, and I'm looking like I just put milk in a hot car. But does it make them consider expanding the room a little bit, or at the very least modifying how they would normally shape out their regular season 53-man roster by putting an extra receiver in there and eventually cutting ties once the room gets healthy again? Did they get scared off by an early injury to Josh Palmer that thankfully has wound up being not really that significant? But Josh Palmer has had some injuries linger in the past that have taken him out for considerable amounts of time in seasons. Do they think that it's worth it to keep more of these guys around? And honestly, when you talk about the back end of the room, yes, it's not, perfect, but who has a wide receiver 5 that would be starting on another team? Nobody. They're at the end of the depth chart for a reason. But I do like the way it's constructed, the type of profiles they have. If you're talking about that speed element and the ability to separate, even if it is by design or assisted by play calling, specifically Joe Brady getting them in motion before with a free release or something along those lines, then it's a good group to have. It makes me happy that that's what you get to fall back on. What I will say is, if Elijah Moore is really having that bad of a camp and it doesn't get any better, and we're talking about they are setting 5 wide receivers out, we know who the first 4 are going to be, because it's going to be Coleman, it's going to be Palmer, it's going to be Shakir, and if he's healthy, it's going to be Curtis Samuel. Is it finally time for Tyrell Shavers to take that wide receiver 5 spot, to emerge from that group and get it? Because to be honest with you, man, the guy has, in my eyes, I don't treat him like he's anything, like he's not Justin Jefferson. I'm not trying to go ridiculous with this, but I think that when you talk about consummate pro, has done everything you have asked him, has shined in the preseason, has shined in practice and training camp, has a rapport with Josh Allen, evidently proven by how many reps you've seen to them while these other receivers have been hurt. And in his only game action, yes, it was garbage time, but made a very substantial play, an explosive play. Is Tyrell Shavers finally going to get his opportunity to fill out the back end of the room? And when we just tie this into this preseason game argument, or not really an argument, we're not yelling at each other, Mike. I don't know why I called it an argument. We're having a great conversation, but a preseason bout, do we think that Tyrell Shavers has the most to gain from a really good performance? And I'm going to be excited to watch him because if he shows out, man, I don't see why you wouldn't give him the wide receiver 5. He's been here a few years. He knows everyone in the room. He knows the playbook. He knows the play caller. He knows his fellow receivers. But even so, just like his build, the frame, like the speed that's paired with it, there's a lot to like about the individual player. Why not? So, I mean, if it's not Elijah Moore, if Elijah Moore, who I had just leaned to because of his veteran presence and the fact that he's been around the league and came off a pretty productive season on a bad offense, if it's not him, Tyrell Shavers is not a bad option to have as your wide receiver 5 or potentially 6 if they go with that. And I'd be happy for him. I think he's more than deserving of it, but we'll have to see. Mike, any final thoughts on this upcoming preseason matchup before we sign off for the evening?
Yeah, I just want to carry off what you just said. I really do think Shavers deserves a shot at making this team. If I had a camp crush right now, as far as like player I'm hoping really goes out and balls and catches the attention of fans, it is Shavers. Ultimately, I don't know if he would make the team over an Elijah Moore or a Curtis Samuel at this point. I don't know if the Bills are trying to decide between Samuel and Moore or if they're both safe. If it might be that they need to keep 6 guys in order to get Shavers on the roster. But they've spent 2 years of development on him right now as a UDFA, I believe, out of San Diego State, and then was started out at Alabama. I remember the year he came out of college, all the talk was Justin Shorter. And Shavers was clearly better than Shorter. And that caught my eye right away. Fans wanted to elevate Shorter, and he just didn't have it. But Tyrell Shavers, I do think, has it. And yes, we're talking about a depth guy. This isn't a person that's going to change the fortunes of your team this year. But I like what he brings to the table. I do believe the Bills see something in him. And some receivers do take a little bit longer time to get to where they need to be. And I do believe that Shorter might have something. So I would love to see him make the team. Last thoughts going into this game. Obviously, this is the typical spiel. Hopefully no injuries. The youngsters have some good moments and just get through it and get through the rest of the preseason. I'm not even going to be going to this game, but I'll be paying attention closely on television. It's one of those things where, not to say this is a bad thing, I think it's a good thing, but this Bills team is kind of boring right now. Yep. They have a good culture in place. They do what they're supposed to do. They know what they are, their identity. And outside of the James Cook situation, there's really no drama. There's really no storylines. It's just get through each day, and then eventually we're going to be September 7th, Sunday Night Football, and things get real at that point in time, and that's what I'm waiting for. I just get through the next month and ball out to start the regular season.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, just final takeaways from this episode and conversation that I could say to anyone is keep your eyes on the James Cook situation, but let's not get ridiculous with how we talk about the player. Yes, it's unfortunate that he's not practicing, but James Cook is entitled to get the money he deserves. If that's with the Bills, great. If it's not with the Bills, then great. He deserves to get money for the production that he has put out there. No one wants to see anything happen to a player where they miss out on that opportunity. So I just hope the situation gets resolved one way or the other and that we can all have a peaceful embark into the season, because it seems like there's been a lot of crazy narratives going on, or at least crazy storylines that have occurred this entire offseason with injury and with scares and stuff. So it'd be one less thing to be stressed out over, I guess you could say. The other thing is when it comes to injuries, like Mike just said, stay healthy. I'm knocking on wood, but I don't have wood next to me, so I'm just knocking on my forehead. Stay healthy. Let's not see anyone meaningful go down in this game. I'm hoping for that to be the case and that we can just keep having practices that stack on each other with more and more bodies coming back into the fray, and that by week 1, all of our bodies are there and we're able to have a productive game with everyone we can depend on. And that includes young players that they are going to have to be dependent on early on, as, of course, you're seeing 6-game suspensions for 2 very key pieces to your D-line. So these guys got to stay on the field, and I'm hoping so. And just, for the guys that are already injured, I am certainly hoping that Curtis Samuel, Cole Bishop, Taylor Rapp, and all get back and get their reps in, because they are really needed. And especially Cole Bishop, just heal up, man. Get back out there, showcase what you got, because when he's healthy, I'm telling you, this guy is going to be a very good player and a very good part of this secondary, and I'm looking forward to it. And just as far as this game goes, to anyone going, enjoy it. If you're watching it on TV like Mike will be, then enjoy it. I am actually going to try my best to simultaneously watch it while I'm also at a different sporting event the same day. So it's going to be a challenge, especially if there may or may not be a large beer in one of my hands while the other one is holding a cell phone. But we're going to do our best, friends. We're going to try our best. But Mike, you're an awesome guest as always, and I cannot stress enough how awesome the work you've been putting out has been this entire summer. If you guys are not following at Mike_Bunt takes, please check him out. See everything that he's got coming out, because seriously, he's getting close-up interviews with players. You just interviewed Deion Dawkins the other day, if I'm not mistaken, right?
There's been a lot. Deion, Connor McGovern, Keon, Maxwell Harrison, Christian Benford,
man.
Greg Rousseau, Joe Andreessen, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, and then I was at the Babbage and McDermott pressers. So it's been a lot, man.
Listen, man, that's just the start, and you guys can see all of that on his Twitter. Check him out. Check out everything going on over at Trainwreck. Those guys do a great job, and Mike is, again, just an awesome person to get on here. So, Mike, thank you so much. For all of you that have tuned into this week's episode, I appreciate the heck out of each and every single one of you. Past few episodes have been really fun, have been great. It's good to be back in the swing of things again. Again, this is a bit of a new format for the show that I decided to do out of nowhere, because I was like, damn, my commute got longer. Why don't I just try pre-recording? And then I realized, oh my God, pre-recording is so nice and convenient. I'm just going to keep doing it. So I've been trying to engage with people in the comments after the show premieres on our channel. So I know the live format is what you guys are used to, but I still try to actively keep up. And I appreciate anyone who is leaving comments, who is liking, and who is subscribing to our channel, which if you have not done yet, you should do that right now. As soon as you are done with this episode, you should sign up for the One Pass that is in the description below, and it will give you access to all of the amazing perks that you can get being an insider, including our premium Discord, which is a ton of fun to be a part of. It's a great time to be a Bills fan, folks. It's a great time for Bills content with every network out there, including our very own. There is a lot that you can consume as we get through the rest of the summer and gear up for the regular season. But Mike Bunt, once again, thank you. My name is Joe DeRosa. By the time you see me next, I will be just a year older. Man, they grow up so fast. Time marches on. I'm going to have an existential crisis when this camera turns off. But before I click the end recording button, I am going to say good night. Take care. Enjoy the weekend. And as always, friends, go Bills. We'll see you soon.